Hello, this is Dr. Parsons, and this is the video for Week 2 assignments. Now, this is going to have a lot of slides, but I'll try to go over them quickly because there's a number of different things I want to discuss. There's going to be some review of the Week 1 assignment and the discussion posts, and then I'll be going into a little more depth with regard to the assignments, the discussion assignments for week number 2. As I've mentioned before, the video can be recorded if you do a pause on the video, and then you can print screen and then save the printed screen or print it out if there's something you want to refer to later. So what I want to talk about first are the discussion post procedures. And as you know, one of the things you're supposed to do is submit your post to SafeAssign in draft and final form before you submit it to Blackboard. Okay, so I run a report before I go into grading and make sure that everything has been properly submitted to SafeAssign. So if I see that there are no check marks and no percentages, that means that you've posted without going to SafeAssign, and according to the rules, that assignment does not count. So if there's any questions about how you do it, I did put in a video with regards to posting things through SafeAssign. I'll go over it quickly here, and if you have more questions, you can go back to the video or get in touch with me. So the first step is to compose your initial post. Now we're talking about response posts, we're talking about the initial posts. You do your initial post, write it in Word, do all your checking, grammar, punctuation, spelling, all that stuff. Make sure that it's the way you want it to look, make sure your references are correct. Then submit to SafeAssign draft. It'll then come back and tell you what your matching percentage is. If your matching percentage is over 20%, you need to write some more, so revise it, send it back to SafeAssign final. Okay, look at the matching percentage again, revise again if you need to, and then you can only submit to SafeAssign twice, but by the time you get through the second draft or the final draft, you should have your percentage down 20% or below. And then you're going to copy and paste that final version from your Word document. Again, we've been just working in Word now and submitting it to SafeAssign, but now you're going to copy it and then paste it into the text portion of the discussion post. And I will show you as we go through this week's assignment, again, more specifically how to do that. Just to make sure, I mean, most of you are doing fine, but a couple of you appear to have a little bit of questions about how to do things, and I just want to make sure everybody is early in the class is comfortable with doing their discussion posts correctly. As I mentioned, there's also a SafeAssign video in the Start Here section of your class that walks you through it in more specific detail. So the other thing I wanted to talk about reviewing last week's discussion is how we were being posted. Now, in my instructions, I said use the discussion week 1 and then do a reply, okay, as you would do here. So if you would go into the week 1 discussion, then you would click on the discussion week 1 anonymous, and that would bring you to this page which would describe what your discussion post would be about, and then you would reply, and then you would post your reply there. Unfortunately, what happens is you guys write so many replies that it becomes very difficult to kind of sort out who's responding to whom. All right, so this creates a little bit of a problem for me as I go through and try to sort things out. So rather than reply to the anonymous post, what we're going to do is do your post on the create thread, which again most of you did, so it was kind of a combination of both. But from now on, from week 2 forward, when you're ready to do your initial post and you're ready to submit it, use the create thread, and that will set up an individual thread for each of you, and each reply will then be assigned directly to your particular thread. And that'll make it a lot easier for all of us to know who's talking to whom, and to continue the discussion in a kind of reasonable fashion. Again, normally I haven't had difficulty with the other approach, but in this one we seem to have so much activity with regards to our discussion posts that it needs to be organized in a different manner. So I'd prefer that you now do your initial post in the create thread, and then everybody can go into that thread to respond to you. And I think I'm going to like this a lot better. All right, the other thing I wanted to talk about is if you're interested in putting a picture or some sort of icon in for your contributions to the class. I think they mentioned this in learning to use Blackboard, but I'll just run through it again quickly. So if you want to do it, you know the procedure. So you go up to the little button up at the top where your username is, click on that, and then that'll open up this little window, and then you'll want to click on the Settings button. And from Settings, you'll want to click on Personal Information, and then Personalize My Settings. And then you're going to use Custom Avatar Image, and then browse your computer to pick up the image itself. Right? So then you should see the image that is going to post along with whatever you put in your discussion post. Your picture or your avatar will show up at that point. The only thing you got to be careful of is there's kind of a restriction in the size of the picture that'll work. So if it's not showing up, it's probably because the picture is too large and you may need to resize it. I'm not going to go into the procedure of how you do that here, but there's instructions on the internet about how to resize your pictures so that Blackboard will accept them as your avatar image or your picture. Okay, moving right along. Now we're going to look at the assignment for this week. So as I've always said, you should always start from your home page, check for any announcements, and then when you're ready to get going, click on the Week 2 assignments. And here you're going to see the reading assignment is to continue the reading in the textbooks. They want you to finish everything for this week and continue working on your paper that's going to be due in week number 3. But mainly I wanted to focus on the discussion and the approach that we're going to be using here. So again, now you can click discussion, and that'll bring you to the topic that we're going to be talking about. And it says to create a reflective and applied statement describing how the reading assignments to date, which would be your textbooks, you haven't been assigned any outside papers at this point, how those reading assignments are affecting your thought processes, development, and professional disposition. This statement should reflect your personal learning process, challenges, moments of discovery, life experiences, and interactions. How will this apply to your management approach in an organizational setting? Now, I find this a bit vague as exactly what it would be. So what I've done is provided a little more specific information about how I want you to do this assignment, and this will be your discussion post for the initial post, and what your post should include. First of all, you're going to have specific references to your textbooks or any outside articles that you plan to use for the basis of your post. I want to see at least 2 references with specific topics that you selected for those references. It's perfectly allowable to use your textbooks for those, but I want 2 separate topics to be included and appropriate references supplied in your post. And this is kind of to practice you up with the idea that these posts are supposed to be based upon your academic articles that you're reading and your textbooks, so that these aren't just simply from personal experience, that you're actually beginning to include in your discussion posts the scholarly material that's supposed to support those posts. Okay, so this is the one where you start to add those articles. Now, some of you did that in your first post of the first week, some of you didn't, but this time it's going to be required because I want to see all of your discussion posts from now on include some scholarly work. You must, again, make your list at the end of which references you used and refer to them in the proper APA format. I also want to see an in-depth explanation of the topics that you've chosen to show that you really have thought about those topics from your reading and the importance in terms of how these fit into general management thinking. The assignment is kind of then branching off into your personal reaction. Why did you choose those particular topics, and how do you interpret those topics, and what examples would you see in your own life experience, your own work experience, that make the topics that you've chosen to write about particularly significant to you? And here everybody is going to be different. They would have chosen different topics and their reaction will be different. Their work experience would be different. But here's where, again, we get to start to see how you are going to start interacting with the material of this class. And then how is the knowledge of these topics that you've been discussing, these two topics, how would they influence an organization? Now you can use as an example where you work now, that if management of that organization, if your manager or higher levels of manager in the organization were fully aware of this topic and the implications of these topics, how would they behave? How would they behave differently than they do now? How would they incorporate these concepts into the practice of management as is observed in that organization? To cover these requirements, you should plan at least 800 pages. 800 pages would be good. 800 words as a minimum. Okay, I don't think you can do a good job with regards to the requirements I've set forward here with less than 800 words. You can write more, but I think if I don't see all these topics covered, all these areas, these requirements covered, you're not really doing the assignment the way I think it should be done. Now this may be a little bit bigger than the typical post that you normally put in, but as DBA students, the discussion posts become an important medium for us to communicate, for you to communicate with your fellow classmates and for me to communicate with you. We don't want to wait just until the papers and work it that way. We really need to use the discussion posts as a basis of talking about these ideas, becoming critical, not in a negative sense, but critical in a way that we're trying to understand other people's perspectives on these particular topics. So I think we're going to try to expand and both in depth and in breadth the discussion posts. This is where once you've written your post, written it up in Word, then you're going to come and submit it to SafeAssign, the draft version. You're going to look at that. You're then going to, when you're finished running it through SafeAssign, create your own thread, and then you're going to copy your Word document and post it in the text portion of the create thread. You're going to need to add a subject. You can put your name there if you want, or whatever you want. You're just required to put something there. But what we're really looking for is the document that you've written being posted, and I would like to see the document. We can use file attachments, but that becomes much more cumbersome for everybody to go in and read if they've got to download the file to be able to see it. So I'd like to see your 800 word initial post put in the text portion. And then, of course, you're going to submit it, and then it becomes something that the rest of us can see and work with. So the keys to success here. Pay attention to the suggestions and advice that I've provided in this presentation. Again, part of my job as a teacher is just not to sit back and make sure that the assignments get done, but to actually provide guidance. And as I tell some people, I feel like I'm the symphony director, the orchestra conductor, and I have all these players out in the symphony pit, and my job is to make sure the horns are playing when they're supposed to be playing and the drums are playing when they're supposed to be playing, and we're all coordinated and working towards the successful completion of our, in this case, our class. So I'm not doing this for my health, I'm doing this to help you and to make the class move forward in a productive manner. Your initial posts are meant to be scholarly writing. You have to cover the requirements, make sure it's there. I'm going to tell you if I think that you're not paying attention to what the requirements are. You need to make sure you do those and put them in an organized fashion. Things should be laid out so that I can find each particular requirement. I should be able to find in your writing where you're covering that. Grammar, spelling, punctuation, word choice are all important. These initial posts need to be formal. If you're unsure what that means, there's a graduate school writing studio that has pretty much a definition of formal writing, scholarly writing, what can or cannot be used, but you shouldn't be using slang, you shouldn't be using colloquialisms, avoid contractions, and a whole series of things that make your writing appropriately scholarly for what we're trying to do here. Now, your response posts can be less formal and more conversational. You can use cartoons if you like, but you should start to look critically at the content. Simply saying that's a great post, I really enjoyed it, to me is not really advancing the discussion. What do you think of what the person said? Do you agree with them? Do you not agree with them? Can you ask them a question about furthering their thinking about the subject? So you have to look at it as if kind of you were the teacher and now the poster is your student, and you're trying to get them to back up and support their ideas with critical thinking. Now, looking ahead, week 3 is going to require the completion of a 20-page paper on global organizations and leadership, so you should certainly be looking ahead for that. And if you have any questions about what I've talked about here, be sure and get in touch with me, and good luck on week number 2.